Hey everyone, welcome to a special two-part making Pika-Pool video. Part 1, I'm going to take you through the planning process. Part 2 is going to be me making the model. So with that, here's part 1. Okay, so as I mentioned, part 1 is going to be primarily the planning process and why it is really important to plan ahead when you're making clay models. I've taken quite a lot of the tips from my top 10 beginning clay video, so what I want to do is flesh those out a bit and show you different things that I do when I'm planning on making models. Okay, so the model I'm going to do is based on a drawing that I did in 2016. Wow. And the reason I've chosen it is because I think it's probably one of my favourite drawings that I've done, and it was quite well received, so I think a 3D version of this would be quite cool. I'll put my link to my Instagram in the description if you want to look at some of the other nonsense that I've been getting up to. So this goes back to my top 10 beginning clay video. You want to pick something familiar and you want to decide what it is you want to make before you get started. So we know what we're going to make, and we've got plenty of references on the internet of Pikachu, so we've got something familiar. Okay, so I'm going to create now what I'd call a skeleton of Pikachu. It's not really a skeleton. All it is I'm going to sort of work out where I can save weight on the model, where I can save material on the model. Also, I want to sort of identify potential weak points and where I will potentially need to add strength to certain parts of the model. Okay, so I'm going to start by lowering the opacity of these, and then, not quite to the outside, I'm going to draw 2 balls like that. So what you might use is 2 balls of scrunched up foil, or maybe a polystyrene ball if you can get your hands on one of those. And what we're doing here is we're taking the weight out of particularly the top, but certainly some of the bottom as well. What we find is that Pikachu is basically a bean shape, and you can see if I use the side view, exactly the same. So the first thing I'll do is I'll create 2 kitchen foil, scrunched up kitchen foil shapes like this, and this will be the start, this will be the core of our skeleton. The next thing we're going to look at is extremities. So in Pikachu's case it's his arms and his ears, because he hasn't really got legs. To be honest, he's just got sort of feet attached to, I don't know, knees, I guess. So we're going to concentrate on the arms and the ears. And what I tend to do with arms is I thread straight through the centre of the foil, straight through the foil, a strong piece of wire, and I make it too long. Because what I can do then, once I've made the bodywork around that, I can cut these wires. Because what you want to try and do is keep the model in proportion as best you can. To make it sort of original to the design. Same with the ears. What you can do is you can use wire again for this, or if you can, a kebab skewer, because you won't really pose the ears. Once they're in place, they'll probably stay there. Maybe the arms, you want a little bit of flexibility in where they go, so wire I would say is better for this sort of thing. The next thing you could do, because Pikachu has got quite sort of chunky arms, is you can add foil going from the main core of the body. Again, to save a bit of weight. If you want it to stay strong, then you can keep it as just keep it as all clay. The other thing to bear in mind is that for this I'm going to be using oil-based clay, which goes back to my video is deciding which clay you want to use. I'm going to be using oil-based clay because it doesn't really set as such. I mean, that's a little bit of it that's been sat in the box for a while. And if I apply enough heat and pressure to it, I can mould it. So even when this model's finished, if I press on it hard enough, I'll be able to squash it like this. So I'm going to be using this for a few reasons. One, I want to really go into some detail with it if I can. The other thing as well is that this is reusable. So, you know, if I decide that I want to use the clay for something else, then I could just melt it down and start again. Because I'm using oil-based clay, it will just set sort of semi-solid, so I don't have to worry about what we call shrinkage, which is where in air dry clay, oven baked clay, and a little bit in polymer clay, as it dries it will shrink, which is why I've left such a gap in between the ball and the edge of the model. because if I create the, if that's the exterior of the model and I create the polystyrene ball right up to the edge, where it will shrink, at the thinnest points it might crack, and then you're going to have to go in and do repair works, and ideally you want to try and avoid that where you can, because it is a big waste of time. Last thing I'm going to look at is his feet. Now on the original design, as I say, his feet are pretty set to his body, so I probably wouldn't add supports for those, or maybe might add some wire like that, but it's not terribly necessary. But what the difference between the original design and my design is, I think if I was to draw the ball there, the feet are actually quite far away from the main body, and that's because I've added boots to the drawing on the design, so I'll have to bear that in mind when creating the skeleton ears. And I might add some small polystyrene boards or some small kitchen foil, just take the weight out of the feet. But because it's like a structural point, it's a point of contact on whatever it is you're going to stand it on. I'll probably just leave those as solid clay, so the model has got some quite rigid support. Okay, so if I move that across, it looks ridiculous. This is basically what I'm going to create before I start with the clay work. So I know where the weaknesses are, so in my opinion it'll be the ears, so I'm going to make sure there's plenty of wire in there. I know where the arms are going to go. I am going to make the arms out of wire originally, so as I say, they're posable if I need to move anything, and I am going to make them overlong so I can cut them short where I need to. I'm going to purposefully make the legs a bit too long, which again I can cut short when I need to. The last thing is a surface. I'm not going to include a surface on mine, I'm going to leave it freestanding. But what you can do is what I've done here, which is on the skeleton of the model, I screwed down 4 points of contact, so both tails and in both of the feet. The skeleton of this was really strong from the offset, which means I can do this, and it's fine. It's really secure. So you can do that with this with the Pikachu model if you want. However, it's not absolutely necessary that you do this particular Pikachu model. I'm not going to make it as big as this. I'm going to make it about 8 to 10 inches if you don't include his ears. I'm going to try and keep it freestanding, but if you want to include a platform, please go ahead. The next thing is the tail. Now, if you watch the original series, or you've got a toy of it or a plushie or whatever, you'll know that the tail is really thin. Depending on how big you want to make your model, it depends on how thick you want to make the tail. Now, what I have done in the past for models that are maybe a couple of inches tall, I've literally just got some thick card, covered it in PVA glue, let it set a bit solid, and then painted over it, and then PVA again, and then it's pretty solid. I mean, there is some flex in it because it is only card, but for smaller models it was ideal. The other thing as well is really important, is to keep this extra bit here. You're going to make the base of it purposefully too long, because what you'll need to do is make sure that you've got somewhere to stick it into the original skeleton. It looks like it's too long, but it's once the body works on there, it will be absolutely fine. What I'm going to do for my model is for the first time I'm going to try and make the tail out of clay. I'm going to make it quite thin. So what I'll do, I'm going to show you a quick sketch of what I'm thinking of doing. And what it should look like is old school Power Ranger logo. So it's a 3D version of the same tail. I know it's not quite right. But so what I'll do is I'll create maybe, I don't know, quarter of an inch, half an inch thick, maybe less, I don't know yet. And then to make it secure, I will run some wire from here all the way through out the top. And what this will do is create 2 points of contact with my original skeleton, which should keep it nice and secure. I've created these 2 points of contact with what will amount to just a long length of wire. and then that will keep the tail nice and secure in place. It will look natural. It won't look quite right. I'll probably mess with the design. I might stick the tail out this way. I don't know. I'll play with the design a little bit when I come to do it. What you want from your model, you want it to be stable, you want it to be secure, and you want it to be fixed in place as best you possibly can, because especially if you're using air dry or oven baked clay, if there's any flex at all, you can cause cracking. Eventually, you might eventually end up with some irreparable damage. So this is why this stage is so important. Once you've got the foundations really set solid and really secure, you'll find that making the model will be much easier, and it will be much stronger as well. Okay, so the last thing I've done is I've just cleared up the skeleton so that you can see a bit clearer about what it's going to look like. I keep calling it the skeleton as well. It's not called a skeleton, it's called the armature. There are no hard and fast rules as to what an armature should look like. It's up to you to decide like how much strength you think your model needs, or how much material you're going to use. The more models that you make and the more things that you do, you'll go through this planning stage just in your head. You'll know just by looking at or thinking about the model that you're going to make where the structural weaknesses will be, how thick you'll need the clay, how stable you'll need the model to be at the end, how heavy it will be. This will all come naturally, but usually through doing it a few times. So just looking at my armature diagram here, the last thing I'm going to show you is this is the absolute basics that you will need for this Pikachu model. So if I just move that over, you'll see that it fits right over the top. As I mentioned before, I've made the arms purposely too long so I can cut them down when I need to. What you can do is you can get some thin wire and wrap it around quite tightly around some of these, if you're going to use a kebab skewer, and you can do it also around the foil. What this will do is it will provide grip essentially for the clay, so it doesn't slide down as more weight is added. You don't have to do any of this. You can make the entire model with zero support, but it's just worth bearing in mind that this will help strengthen it from the inside, and that's really it's a really core thing to do. Okay, so that brings an end to this video. If you have any questions or you need me to expand more, please put it in the comments and I'll perhaps do a future video on it, and I'll focus on maybe a particular area. I've covered a fair amount of ground here, I think. As I said, this was part one of a two-part video, so if you want to see part two, please hit the subscribe button, give the video a like if you enjoyed it as well, and I'll see you next time.